When I stumbled across this Hot Wheels 2016 Ford GT race casting, I knew what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to see if I could find a decal set for the 2019 Ford GT number 66 that was in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I found it online, ordered it, and I was off and running. I drilled this apart. It has two posts, one at the front, one at the back. Metal body, plastic base, plastic interior that includes the rear spoiler, fin, whatever the heck you want to call it back there. Had to wiggle it a little bit to get that back end apart. Guess it needed a little bit more drilling. Um, Here you see the center section come out, and if you look carefully, it also includes part of the sides of the body right behind the doors. See there? That comes back to bite me a little bit later. Not terribly, but you'll see. There you see the casting after it's been through the stripper. Pretty clean casting. I mean, it did need a lot of cleanup, but drilled it out, put some 256 self-tapping screws in it, Phillips self-tapping screws in this one. And then I get to work, cleaning it up a little bit. Yeah, the filing. It really, it wasn't in terrible shape. It wasn't play worn or anything like that. So it didn't have any dents or damage from that kind of thing. But just the casting itself, once the paint was off of it, it kind of revealed a lot of areas that just needed to be cleaned. They were just a little rough. There were some fine casting lines in areas, not terribly so. Probably some of the roughest area was around the rear wing. I think the rear wing kind of, like in there, I think the rear wing kind of hides it. And for whatever reason, on the casting itself was rough. But you just go through the file and you get it all nice and smooth and shiny. There were a couple details area on the front of the body that I needed to file down because I knew there was detail on the decals that I didn't want raised on the casting itself. I knew they'd give the decals trouble. So clean the casting off with IPA. And I had gone over it with the buffing wheel at this point, the Scotch-Brite small buffing wheel on the Dremel. Then I hit it all with Krylon Specialty Lacquer Black, both the plastic center section and the body itself. And by this time, the decals had arrived. So you'll see some of the decals go on. Some of them are rather tedious. But I thought, well, let's do the rear wing first, because that way if I have any problems, that section, I can easily try and recreate those decals if there's a problem. So there you see the Ford EcoBoost decal going on. Again, I use micro set when I'm putting these decals on. It just helps. Once they're on, I go over it with micro sol to get them to suck down to the body. Got these little pointed Q-tips. Haven't had these before. I ordered these off Amazon. They're supposed to be pretty lint-free, and while they aren't as linty as your regular Q-tip, at least the regular Q-tips I've been using, if you want them to be linty, you can make them so. But I don't want them to be. So I laid down the basic decals at first, and then some of the decals like those, I had to use an X-Acto knife to cut out. Because of the shape, you can't have much excess around them at all to fit the body properly. And again, these decals aren't made for the Hot Wheels casting. So after I had those down, I wanted to protect them. So I put a clear coat over them and then set it aside for a couple days. And then I came back to the casting and added additional decals. I also reconsidered the decals. There were a lot of super tiny ones that would have just looked like little smudges on the body. That during that 2-day gap to kind of reevaluate things, I realized I didn't want to put those on. Now, the decals are far from finished, but I knew I didn't want the super tiny ones. So I put the rest of the decals on at this point, the one on the glass that you see there. And what came back to bite me was on the sides. Because of how the plastic interior, you see how I just put the Ford emblem on the doors. On the actual car itself, it also has EcoBoost alongside of that. The problem with that, gauzy, the problem with that is because of how they split the body, I would have needed to split the decal. Looking back on it now, there's part of me that thinks I leave that decal off, I assemble it with the center section, apply the decal, then use the X-Acto knife to cut the decal, then separate that center section back out, clear coat the individual sections, and then install the glass center section and body and go through the typical process. I think that's how I do it now, as opposed to sacrificing the EcoBoost wording. But, it was a decision at the time, and I went with it, and I'm happy with the result. I also decided to swap out the wheels. The wheels on this originally looked really good. I decided to swap them out because I wanted real riders on there. I wanted the look of the rubber tires. And had I left the originals on there, I also would have been perfectly happy. They would have been fine. You make decisions when you're doing these, and you try and make your best decision as you go. And then I think everybody, once they're done, at least I do, I kind of look back at the build and think, okay, what could I have done better? What could I have done differently? Did I make the right choices on this? If I do, like on the next build, what can I learn from this build that I would do possibly differently on another build? And I think on this one, the thing I've come away with is that cutting the decal and putting it on to the two different halves of the body, then cutting it and then taking it apart. I think that's the thing I've come away from this one. And also I've come away from this one realizing that it was a good idea to clear coat that point on the decals where I had all the stripes on. Being white toner based decals, they can be flaky at times. And I didn't want any of the white to flake off somehow or lessen the intensity of it. I didn't do headlight decals on this one. And you saw me do headlight decals on the Porsche 917 build that turned out wonderfully. And that's a very recent build. I decided against it on this one. As much as I like those headlights, my decision being that this thing looks absolutely wicked. The black, with the black headlight area, it just looks mean. And I thought if I put a lighter colored headlight on there, I think it's going to detract from that. And if you look at, you'll see this car on the turntable before, and you'll see how those headlight decals that were on that original just don't look good. They take away from the casting. And I didn't want that to happen on this. I suppose I could have gone a very smoked color for the headlights, and it still would have looked wicked. But just leaving the black paint there, I think, was the best choice for me on this. That front decal with the white stripe across the front edge of the car, that was rough. It's one of the things about using lacquer clear that helps is it actually helped, and I was counting on it, to help melt that into the bumper, the excess of the original decal. It rolls, see? So here you see the original. And there's not a lot of detail to the decals. You see the Ford EcoBoost on the side, and that's very similar to this actual car. See the headlights, though? They do not look good. But, swapped out the wheels. And I think you'll agree that they look better with the Real Riders. From the Real Riders Set 1, that I'm not sure is still available from Hot Wheels. That set might be sold out at this point. There you see the front edge of that. And that decal is actually larger. And even using microsol to get it to try and suck down and curve into that area, I was banking on the lacquer clear to help soften that even more. It did. And then I went over that with a Q-tip, with a toothpick. As it was drying, you just press that up and under. And so that full thickness of that decal, you don't see there. It worked out really well. And it's one of those things that you also have to be careful with clear lacquers, because if you have a decal over an open area, it'll just dissolve it. You'll just lose it. But you can use that to your advantage sometimes. So there you have it. I think this thing looks mean. I'm really happy with the results. I hope you like this build as much as I do. I'm really thrilled with it. Thank you for watching these videos. I'll let you go through the rest of the glamour shots. Everybody stay safe and healthy out there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.